So now let's talk about the boundary boss base feature. Now this feature is very much similar to the loft boss base feature which we have already discussed, but there are few differences which I'll highlight. Now here I will start with these profiles, and we have two similar profiles in this direction and then two single line kind of profile. This one is a line and this one is an open arc, and it's again in a different direction. Alright, so now let's go to this boundary boss base feature, and here I'll start with direction 1. So I'll select this first sketch in direction 1 and then second sketch in direction 2. Alright, now we need to specify direction 2. So we don't have a guide curve here. This is, though similar to our lofted boss base feature, still there are differences in the nomenclature as well. So we have the direction 1 and direction 2. Now in the direction 2, I'll select this line and then I'll select this arc. And we now have this boundary boss base feature. Now let's analyze this part, what we are getting here. So in this case, instead of using a guide curve, what we used here is sketch 2. So in this case, this is sketch 2, which is in the second direction, will influence this complete 3D part with the same weightage as the main sketch. Now in case of loft feature, this main profile usually influences the final shape quite a lot, and guide curves are simply the curves that guide the path of final part. So they don't significantly influence the shape of the final path, but in this case both the direction 1 and direction 2 sketches influence the final shape. Now what will be the result? Well, in this case, as you can see, we have this sketch and I want to highlight these two parts. Just look at this area. This is completely rectangular. Now why is this thing rectangular? Well, because of this straight line. Now this straight line is close to this one, and hence it is influencing these two pretty closely, though you can change the way it is influencing using these influence options. So you can again select next curve, next sharp, or next edge, and the influence will change accordingly. So it's completely up to you if you want to change the way it is influenced, but in this case I'll select global. I want to influence it all the way around. So this line is influencing it and it's keeping this line and this line straight. And also if you look at this arc is influencing the shape right here, but when you orbit this around and look at it from this direction, just look at this. This shape is not influencing this arc significantly. So both of them have kind of equal influence. This thing has its influence along this direction and this arc has its influence in this direction. Alright. Now let's make the same part using lofted boss base feature. So I'll just click OK. This is the final part. As you can see, we have got this kind of bump here, and this is completely straight set of lines. All right, let's press Ctrl Z and I'll go to lofted boss base feature and the same part. So first and second sketch. Now we have guide curve. So in the guide curve, I'll select this line and then I'll select this arc, and immediately you'll see the difference. Well, the first difference is this. So as you can see, we do have a straight line here, but even after creating it with a straight line, we have this kind of curve here. So we have this kind of curve shape, and if I just move it slightly like this, you can see it clearly. We have got this kind of bump here. So we have a gap and then it just goes all the way up to this here. Now similarly here also you can see that this guide curve is influencing it in this direction, and not only that, when you move it around and look at it from this side, this feature is influencing this completely from this point to this. Now if you remember from the previous example, in the boundary feature, this sketch was only influencing it at this point, but in this case it is all the way around. So these two sketches or the guide curves have little influence over the way this part is created, and mostly it's these two sketches which are driving the shape of this final part. Now that's the biggest difference between the lofted boss base feature and the boundary boss base feature. So here also I'll click OK and we have this kind of part. Now of course we can change the way this thing is created using some tweaks, and that we will do now. So for that I'll once again go to Loft, Edit Feature, and here we can make starting and end profiles normal. So here we'll go to Start End Constraints, and here I'll select normal to profile for the starting And for the end profile, I'll select normal to profile. And it looks like we managed to make it straight. So this is straight and this is also straight. But now look at this part. This is again kind of bumpy, but it's not again kind of very gradual. And we have this kind of bumpy part here. So this did kind of manage to make it a little bit better, but still it's not that good. So with a few tweaks, we can make it close to the boundary feature, but not all the features are the way we want it to be. All right, now let's go to another part. Now here we have this kind of profiles, and using this profile, I'll make a 3D cigar shape. So again, I'm going to use boundary boss base feature, and I'll start with this one first, second, third, and the last profile. Now make sure that these nodes are connected properly. So here we are, and then we'll select the direction 2. So direction 2, that's the first sketch, and then we have the second sketch. And as you know, this will just create it kind of like this, a completely smooth profile that follows both of these direction sketches with equal weightage. Now let me show you another advantage of using a boundary boss base feature rather than lofted boss base feature. Now in the lofted boss base feature, you can change the direction of the starting profile and the end profile, but there is absolutely no control over the way these mid profiles are controlled. And here we have these two sketches. Now in this case, you can control the direction of these two profiles. So here I'll just go to this option and I'll just select normal to profile. Now in case of lofted boss base feature, you can change the direction for the starting profile and the end profile for sure, but now we have a control for these profiles. Now we do have this warning message, which I'll get to in a moment, but for now click OK. And here we are, we have got this thing. Now this is also completely normal. So what is happening here is this profile will be created exactly normal to the plane of this sketch. Now in this case, you can also increase this influence. So if you want to influence it more, just click here, and that's going to make it straight to a larger distance. So here, as you can see, when I moved it to 1.5, it started to deform this thing, and that's why we got the error message. If you just move it even further, you will see this kind of deformity. So beyond a certain point, it's going to deform the shape completely that you may not want in this case. So I'll just change it back to 1. All right, now this is normal here. Also, I'll just make it normal here. I just want it exactly normal to this profile. So I'll just click here and I'll select normal to profile. Again, the warning message. So you just don't need to just bump this number way up. So I'll just slightly move it. And there we are. We have got this thing here also. And this is also normal at this point, normal at this point. And so is this. So here also, these are completely normal. Now click OK. And that's our boundary feature. Now here you can actually see this normal profile. So from this point to this point, actually you can see that this is kind of bright here, but then we have this kind of shadow here. So that's the area which is normal. And then again, we have the same thing slightly here. If I'll just tilt it, you can see it's slightly here. So that's the way this is creating the normal. Now the same thing, if we create with loft, I'll just press Ctrl Z and let's go to loft. And once again, I'm going to use the sketches first, sketch, and the sketch, and then finally this is sketch. All right, the nodes, they should be aligned properly, and then the guide curves. So the first guide curve and the second guide curve. So there we are. We got almost similar kind of curve, but as you know, we don't have any curvature control for all of these sketches. The only thing we can control is start and end constraint. So start constraint, you can certainly make it normal to profile, and end you can make it normal, which in this case it is already. So this is completely normal at 90 degrees to this sketch. Here also it is completely at 90 degrees to this sketch, but this one, well, it is not exactly at 90, but you can certainly do that using the boundary boss base feature. So that's another thing you can create. Now, before we wrap this up, let me highlight the main differences between the boundary boss base feature and lofted boss base feature. Now, the boundary feature creates the profile which is much closer to the original sketch. So it just follows the sketch in direction 1 and direction 2, and hence it creates a 3D shape which is much more closer to the sketch profile. Now, loft depends heavily on the sketch profile and less on guide curves. Whereas in boundary boss base feature, it depends on direction 1 and direction 2 sketches equally. So both the direction of sketches influence the final part equally. Now the curvature controls are only available for start and end sketches in a lofted boss base feature, whereas in a boundary feature it is available for all the sketches. So that's the boundary boss base feature.